It's said that every campus has its own ghost story, and ours is no exception. Everyone at Blackwood University knows about the library, tall, ancient, and unnervingly quiet, even during the busiest hours. Rumors swirl through whispered conversations, tales of late-night encounters with a ghostly librarian whose spirit never left after a tragedy years ago. Some say she's searching for a lost book. Others claim she's guarding something hidden deep in the basement. The story usually sounds like a joke, something the seniors tell freshmen to spook them. But what's strange is how many people swear they've heard or seen something they can't explain. A shadow moving when no one else is there, the sound of footsteps on empty floors, or books tumbling from shelves with no one nearby. I wasn't one to believe in ghosts. Neither were Tom or Mia. At least that's what we told each other when we decided to spend a night in the library to see if the stories were true. We thought it would be fun, a thrill to break up the monotony of papers and exams. But the moment we walked in after hours, the air felt different. The library was dead silent, the kind of silence that made every tiny sound feel amplified. The creak of the wooden floor beneath our shoes, the faint hum of flickering lights overhead, it all felt louder than it should have. As we made our way past endless rows of shelves, I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. At all. First, it seemed like nothing, just our nerves playing tricks on us. But then, from somewhere deep in the library, we heard it. A faint, rhythmic tapping, like someone lightly drumming their fingers on a wooden table. We froze, exchanging nervous glances. Probably just the wind, Tom said, forcing a laugh. But there was no wind in here. Anna was the one who came up with the idea. She always had this intense determination, like she needed to prove something to everyone, especially herself. As a journalism major, she was always chasing the next big story, and the library rumors were just too good to pass up. "Think about it," she'd said, her eyes practically sparkling with excitement. "If the ghost stories are true, this could be front-page material. And if they're not, we've still got a great angle to debunk the campus myth. It's a win-win." Tom was the first to volunteer to join her. He wasn't exactly the type to take anything seriously, always cracking jokes, always the loudest voice in the room. But underneath all that, there was something else. Something you'd only notice if you paid attention. He had a way of deflecting, of laughing just a little too hard at things that scared him. "Come on," he'd said with a grin. "How often do you get to ghost hunt in a library? Worst case, we get a good story to tell. Best case, and we run into the ghost and I scream louder than both of you." And then there was Mia. Quiet, almost to the point of disappearing into the background. But there was something about the library that lit a fire in her. She knew everything about it, its history, its architecture, and of course the stories. While Anna was after the headline and Tom was chasing a laugh, Mia was different. For her, it was personal. "You guys don't get it," she'd said softly. "There's something special about this place, something forgotten. I just want to understand it." The three of us couldn't have been more different, but somehow that made it work. Anna's confidence, Tom's humor, Mia's quiet resolve. It balanced out. At least that's what we thought as we stood in front of the library doors that night. Tom shoved his hands into his jacket pockets, rocking back on his heels. "All right, fearless leader," he said, nodding at Anna. "What's the plan?" Before she could answer, a faint creak echoed from inside the library like a door slowly swinging open. None of us had touched it. "Guess the library's inviting us in," Mia whispered. And with that, we stepped inside. The library at night was nothing like it was during the day. In the daylight, it had its charm. Rows of ancient bookshelves, warm pools of light spilling from antique lamps, the faint hum of quiet conversation. But now, in the dead of night, it was something else entirely. The main hall stretched out before us, impossibly vast. Towering shelves loomed on either side, casting long, jagged shadows across the floor. The ceiling seemed to rise forever, disappearing into darkness, and the chandeliers overhead flickered faintly, like they were struggling to stay alive. It was silent. Too silent. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that made every small sound feel deafening. You could almost hear the weight of the books pressing down, the faintest creak of the old wooden floorboards under our feet. Somewhere deep within the library, there was the soft rustle of pages turning. We all heard it, but none of us dared to say anything. At the far end of the hall, a staircase spiraled down into the basement. No one went down there. Ever. It was the stuff of campus legend, a restricted section sealed off years ago. Some said it held books too dangerous to read. Others claimed it was where the librarian had died. Whatever the truth, the door at the bottom was locked tight. Or at least, it was supposed to be. As we walked past, a cold draft swept through, the air carrying the faint scent of old paper and something else, something metallic. Then came the sound, soft, almost imperceptible at first. The basement door rattled just once. Tom froze. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. None of us answered, but we didn't need to. We all heard it. The door rattled again, louder this time, like something on the other side wanted out. We'd barely settled in when the first strange thing happened. Anna had her notepad out, scribbling ideas for her article, while Tom wandered aimlessly between shelves, pulling out random books and flipping through them. Mia was off by herself, trailing her fingers along the spines of old volumes, her face lit with a quiet kind of fascination. Then, out of nowhere, a book hit the floor with a loud thud. "Okay, who did that?" Tom asked, grinning like he was already in on the joke. But none of us had touched it. The book had fallen from the middle of a shelf far above where any of us were standing. "It's an old building," Anna said, though her voice was tight. "Stuff like that happens." Tom shrugged, but even he didn't look convinced. A few minutes later, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then steadied. "Seriously?" Tom groaned. "They can't afford better wiring in this place?" But it wasn't just the lights. There was something else, faint but unmistakable. The sound of whispering. It wasn't coming from any of us. It wasn't coming from anywhere we could see. Mia froze, her eyes wide as she stared down one of the aisles. "Do you see that?" she whispered. At the far end of the row, just barely visible in the dim light, was a shadow. Not the kind cast by the shelves or the flickering. We all stood at the top of the staircase, staring down into the basement as the faint creak of the rattling door echoed up to us. The air felt colder here, heavier. No one said it out loud, but we all felt the same thing, like something was waiting for us down there. Anna was the first to move, gripping her flashlight tightly as she started down the narrow stairs. "If there's a story, it's down here," she muttered, more to herself than to us. Tom followed, his usual smirk replaced by a wary silence. Mia and I hesitated, but the thought of being alone upstairs was somehow worse than what might be waiting below. The stairs creaked with every step, the sound swallowed by the thick, stale air. The deeper we went, the darker it got, the faint light from above barely reaching the bottom. When we finally stepped into the basement, it felt like we'd entered another world. Dust clung to the air, and the faint smell of mildew mixed with something metallic, like old blood. Rows of rusted filing cabinets and forgotten stacks of paper lined the walls. Mia moved toward an old desk in the corner, her flashlight catching the glint of something metallic, a brass nameplate with faded lettering. "Margaret Lanson," she read aloud, "head librarian." Anna began flipping through a stack of brittle papers on the desk, her brow furrowing. "These are journal entries," she said, her voice shaky. She was researching something, an artifact maybe? Tom leaned over her shoulder, squinting at the faded handwriting. "What does it say?" Anna skimmed the page, her lips moving silently. Then she froze. She said it was cursed. She tried to hide it, but something went wrong. Before anyone could respond, the basement door slammed shut behind us with a deafening crash. We all spun around, hearts racing. "It's locked," Tom whispered, his voice barely audible over the sound of our pounding hearts. And then, From somewhere deep within the basement, a soft, rhythmic tapping began. The tapping grew louder, echoing off the walls of the basement. Anna grabbed the edge of the desk, her knuckles white as she tried to steady herself. "We need to get out of here," she said, her voice trembling. Tom was already at the door, jiggling the handle furiously. "It's stuck, it won't budge." Then came the whispers. Faint at first, like the rustle of wind through leaves, but they grew clearer with each passing second. Words began to form, low and deliberate, as though someone or something was speaking directly to us. "Leave. Now." Mia gasped, her flashlight flickering. The beam of light danced across the walls before sputtering out entirely, plunging us into near total darkness. She clutched at Anna's arm, her voice a desperate whisper. "It's her. It's the librarian. I know it." A cold breeze swept through the room, chilling us to the bone. Books began toppling from shelves one after another, slamming to the floor as though shoved by an invisible hand. I can't do this," Tom stammered, his usual bravado completely gone. "I thought this was just a stupid ghost story. I didn't think—" He cut himself off, shaking his head as if he couldn't bear to finish the thought. Mia's voice broke the silence. "I never told you why I care so much about this place," she said, her words barely audible over the growing chaos around us. "My grandmother, she used to work here. She told me stories about Margaret Lanson, about the things she saw. I thought—" She paused, swallowing hard. "I thought if I could figure it out, I'd understand why she was so afraid of this place." Anna, the skeptic, stood frozen, staring at the desk. For the first time, doubt flickered in her eyes. "What if—" she began, hesitating. "What if there's some truth to this?" Her flashlight flicked across a pile of books on the floor, and one in particular caught her eye. It looked ancient, its leather cover cracked and weathered with age. She bent down, hesitating before lifting it. "What is it?" Tom asked, his voice shaky. Anna didn't answer right away. When she opened the book, her breath caught. Inside, scrawled in dark, jagged ink, were their names. All of their names. "What the hell?" Tom whispered. Before anyone could react, the whispers stopped. The silence was worse. The air grew thick, suffocating, as the temperature dropped to an impossible chill. And then, there she was. At first, it was just a shadow, a flicker in the corner of their eyes. But as the whispers grew louder, the figure became clearer. A woman, pale as death itself, her eyes dark pits of sorrow and rage. The librarian. She was no longer just a ghost. She was a force, angry and desperate. Her form shimmered and flickered with every breath, her voice barely a whisper in the shadows. You don't understand, I was innocent." Tom backed away, his face pale with fear. "What do you want from us?" he shouted. Anna was frozen, the ancient book still in her hands. "She wants justice," Mia said, her voice steady. "No." She was accused of stealing rare books, but she didn't do it. Her spirit never found peace. The ghost's face twisted in grief, then twisted into fury. "They took everything from me," she moaned, her voice shaking the walls. Books began flying off the shelves, the air crackling with energy. The group had to act fast before they were caught in her fury forever. The book. It had to have answers. Anna flipped through the brittle pages, heart pounding. And there, in the corner of the final page, was the truth. The librarian had kept a hidden journal, one detailing her innocence and the real thief. Without thinking, Anna grabbed the journal and held it high. "This is what you wanted, right?" She yelled over the roar of the storm around them. The librarian's form flickered violently, her face contorting with a mix of rage and relief. The bookshelves trembled, and then, as suddenly as it had all started, everything stopped. The ghost vanished, leaving only the echo of a soft sigh. The library was silent once again. The door opened, but the group knew they'd never forget the librarian's face or the curse that had been lifted that night. The ghost was gone. The library, once heavy with an unshakable dread, was now peaceful. The air felt lighter, and the flickering lights finally steadied, casting a warm glow across the room. It was as though the building itself had exhaled a long-held breath, releasing the tension that had gripped it for so long. Anna sat at a table, typing furiously on her laptop. The story she had come to write, once just a piece of investigative journalism, had turned into something much deeper, something real. Her fingers hovered over the keys, but there was no doubt now. She had the truth, and it was going to be a story no one would forget. Tom, his usual bravado gone, leaned back in his chair, letting out a deep sigh. "Guess I'll have to stop making fun of ghost stories, huh?" he said, half smiling. "But, yeah, I think I'm okay with that." For the first time, he didn't look over his shoulder with fear. Mia ran her fingers over the worn edges of the old books on the shelves. Her connection to the library, once just an obsession, now felt like a bond, something stronger than she had ever imagined. It was as if the library had shared its secrets with her, and she in return had given it peace. But just as they were beginning to let go of the night's horrors, Anna noticed something odd. The ancient book, the one they had used to reveal the librarian's truth, was gone. Its place was empty, as if it had never been there at all. A chill ran through her. "What the hell?" she whispered, looking at Tom and Mia. The library was silent, but somewhere, deep within its walls, something whispered once more. Weeks had passed since the strange events in the library. The air no longer felt oppressive, and the light stayed steady, but something lingered, something unspoken. The library had changed, but so had they. Anna had her article, Tom had his piece, and Mia had found a sense of belonging. Yet there was a hollow unease, like the last page of a book never quite finished. One evening, a new student wandered into the library, eyes wide with the usual curiosity of a freshman. She brushed past the rows of books, her fingers trailing lightly over the dusty spines. It was then she spotted it, an ancient, weathered book resting on a desk in the far corner, one that had clearly been left untouched for years. As she opened it, a chill ran through her. Her eyes scanned the first page, and there, written in faint ink, were the names of Anna, Tom, and Mia. But there was one more name now, hers. The student froze, heart pounding in her chest. Behind her, the door creaked, and the silence of the library seemed to grow heavier, thicker, as though something had woken again. And somewhere deep within the stacks, a whisper floated on the air. "It's not over."